Hey everyone, Mystical Mark here. This will be your weekly astrology forecast for the week of January 7th to the 13th of 2024. I'm sorry I'm a bit late on this. I was having some issues this week and I did have some technical difficulties in recording this. I do these live on Twitch as I record, and the stream literally kept dropping out, I think at least 3 or 4 times during it. So if you're watching this video and you're wondering why I start talking and then I start talking about maybe the same thing again, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to edit this. Please excuse the jank. I'm very sorry about that. This week we're talking about, of course, the new moon in Capricorn, as well as Mercury coming back into Capricorn and Juno going retrograde. So I will put a time below here somewhere if you just want to jump straight to the new moon in Capricorn. That's kind of the highlight of this week. Otherwise, let's get into it for this week. Oh, and feel free to check me out on Twitch if you want to watch these before they come onto YouTube. So let's get into it. Okay, so for this week, we'll start off here on Sunday. I know I'm recording this a bit late, streaming this a bit late. I apologize for that for everyone. It's just kind of had a lot going on and needed a bit of a breather before I decided to do this. And, you know, part of my lesson in all of this is learning to balance out my life a bit more. So kind of where we're going with that. All right, so on this day, we're going to have Venus here in Sagittarius, an exact square to Black Moon Lilith here in Virgo. I already talked about this on the daily, so I do dailies on TikTok, as well as YouTube Shorts, as well as Instagram Reels, and then I also do posts on Mastodon, Twitter, and what's the other one? Threads. Regarding just kind of a daily astrology blurb. If there's anything major happening during the day, which is most days, I end up posting. If there's nothing really major happening, I don't usually post unless there's something really relevant with maybe what the moon's doing or something. But usually I kind of just leave it for the, sorry, there was something distracting here. I usually just kind of leave that, just, you know, balance in my own life, and also it's kind of hard to, you know, post all the time every day. So anyway, this week, we're going to have this Venus in square to Black Moon Lilith here. Again, I've already talked about this. This is kind of really taking action in a practical sense, really for where Venus is wanting to expand into these new spaces, into these new areas, right? We've dealt a lot. Mercury is still in shadow period here in Sagittarius, and we'll be moving at the end of this week back into Capricorn to complete its shadow period, which is going to be interesting on January 20th, the day that it ends. Its shadow period, where we're going to have this Sun-Pluto conjunction at the anaretic degree of Capricorn, and then both of them are going to move one after the other into Aquarius. So that's kind of going to be like a seemingly pivotal day this month. But as of right now, we're still dealing with a lot of this Venus stuff. Venus is still ruling the South Node here in Libra, dealing a lot with kind of relationships and stuff. So, but we're taking action in a practical sense here. Likely today regarding where we want to expand in these Venus-related themes. And remember, Venus rules both Taurus as well as Libra. So this can be this practical kind of material money type sense, as well as a relationship kind of balance sense as well. So any kind of these themes are kind of related to maybe where we're wanting to take action, maybe draw boundaries, maybe be like, hey, we need to take care of this today, that kind of stuff, in order to kind of move and expand into these new spaces that Venus wants to go in. We want to experience kind of more positive stuff. There's a lot of stuff that has kind of happened, I think, since just the end of November to now, throughout this Mercury retrograde, throughout all this stuff, all these things that have kind of come up that we're still kind of looking to deal with or kind of finish up, I guess, now that Mercury is in its post-shadow period throughout this time. All right, so let's move on here to Monday the 8th. So we're going to have Mercury here then in exact square to Neptune here in Pisces. So during Mercury's retrograde, Mercury has already kind of been to this point. I believe the last time was kind of Mercury conjunct Mars in square to Neptune. So it's kind of like taking action on like this big picture type thinking type energy. So in this case now, Mercury is now coming back over this space. So again, with this square, this is kind of pushing to see, it's like this bigger picture stuff. This can also be a bit foggy. Whenever you have kind of Mercury and this Pisces or Neptunian type energy, it can be a bit foggy, but how we get through that is kind of focusing on our intuition, listening to that side of ourselves. This also kind of reminds me of like 7 of Cups type energy. So it's like where you have like all those kind of choices. This is like a lot very like Jupiterian, very much like bigger picture type thinking. So it's like you can kind of see all your options, but it's also maybe not quite clear. There could be some things that maybe you don't want to choose within that card, right? And that's where this kind of deception stuff comes in. And maybe where you'd want to see kind of expand and zoom out to maybe see the bigger picture in regarding this square here, this Mercury in square to Neptune, right? So again, Mercury has been retrograde. Mercury is in post shadow now, so it's going over these old spaces as this square kind of happens here. So this is happening again. So we've already been in this space when Mercury was conjunct Mars here, maybe wanting to take action on this bigger vision. But now maybe we're kind of going over this again, seeing it maybe a bit more clearly. Now Mars is now in Capricorn. We have a lot of Capricornian energy going on. So maybe this is maybe laying the foundation for kind of a lot of this stuff, setting our goals, setting those kinds of things in regards to what's happening here. But again, just be mindful of this illusion of this Neptune type energy, and kind of remember listening to your intuition and zooming out to see the bigger picture. And I feel like this may be gaining maybe a bit more clarity now that we're going over this space again, now that Mercury is in fact direct. And because previously it's maybe where we wanted to take action or taking action to expand in a sense, but now we're kind of seeing it again, maybe in a bit more clarity and recognizing our goals and the things of where we kind of want to move to. Because remember, Mars is in Capricorn here. This Capricornian energy can move a bit slow as well, right? Because Capricorn is like slow and steady wins the race. You want to do things. If you want something good, you have to take care to do it right, right? And again, there's that kind of perfectionist aspect to Capricorn as well. There's a maturity that kind of exists there. So kind of be mindful of that in that sense. Okay, so on Tuesday here, the 9th, we're going to have this Sun in trine to Uranus retrograde, as well as Mars in sextile to Saturn here in Pisces. All right, so this Sun in trine to Uranus here, we're dealing with an aspect of change. Uranus is in Taurus, Sun is in Capricorn. This is very practical stuff, dealing with our goals. Dealing with, in Taurus, this could deal with anything of value, really, what we deem as value. Our self-worth. I feel self-worth is kind of a bigger part of this. But this Taurus energy also relates to Venus now in Sagittarius. I mean, Jupiter is in here in Taurus as well. There's a very expansiveness and aspect of change to this energy here with this trine to Uranus now. Mercury is still in post shadow, dealing with a lot of the Venus stuff that happened during the retrograde period. Venus still ruling the South Node. So again, there's a lot of aspects here regarding kind of change and that kind of stuff going on. So with this trine again to Uranus is still retrograde. Uranus will go direct on January 27th, but it still is currently retrograde. So we're changing away from like these old spaces where we've been in terms of financially, material things, how we make our money. Again, it's relating to this Venus type stuff, like I mentioned. Right? And I said aspects of self-worth, but really there's a strong aspect of change here in a real practical sense that has very much potential this week, I want to say, because this is still going to be in trine when we hit this new moon in Capricorn. So when I was going over this before, I kind of got the idea of it's almost like you're laying in this new foundation, pouring the concrete for this like new foundation that is going to occur kind of on this new moon. I'll talk a bit more about that when we get to it. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be interesting. But this change, obviously with this exact trine, will kind of begin on Tuesday. We'll begin to see that, and maybe the foundation will kind of begin to be laid when we kind of hit that new moon type energy on Thursday. So also on this day, we're going to have Mars in sextile to Saturn here in Pisces. So I always say that Saturn in Pisces is kind of like the dissolver of this structure, but Mars here in Capricorn, Mars is exalted in Capricorn and is wanting to kind of take action, take orders from the boss, kind of so to speak, or even be the boss. Mars is also ruling the North Node here in Aries. And also this Chiron type energy is where we want to move forward now with Chiron direct into maybe healing those wounds of our independence, not being maybe hurt in kind of the same ways. We had a lot of like Chiron stuff happen last week where we may have felt triggered personally in a lot of ways because Aries dealing with that aspect of self. But now we have this sextile to Saturn, so we want to take action to push through those blocks, right? So we want to kind of lay down maybe more new goals, push forward in new directions. This is very cardinal energy, both Capricorn and Aries. So with this Mars stuff, it's kind of this push forward. But with this Capricorn, it could be setting new goals, even laying boundaries. And like I said, kind of the beginning of the setting of those new foundations in a way as we begin to move forward in that sense, but we're kind of dissolving these old structures. But with Pisces too, Pisces energy is there's like no limits to Pisces, right? So this is kind of taking action maybe on putting the foundation into this higher vision in a sense, right? Especially since we do have Mercury still in square to this Neptune, kind of zooming out and seeing this bigger picture type energy that is existing here. So it's kind of destroying those kind of old foundations or limitations and realizing to go with the flow and that kind of there's more stuff kind of going on here, right? So there's this taking action to kind of lay down new goals, but dissolve those old structures at the same time. Anyways, I've completely lost my train of thought now regarding Mars sextile Saturn. I think I've basically kind of covered that point, is that we're kind of maybe setting these new goals, taking new actions on things to really push through these blocks and dissolve these blocks is basically what I was trying to get at. Mars is also building and trying to Jupiter here. Again, expanding on this abundance. We're really pushing forward, pushing through these blocks, dissolving through these old ways of restriction, but also kind of setting, again, this foundational type stuff, these new goals and beginning to set and kind of take action on that. This could also be setting new boundaries, setting new things, expanding in these new spaces and new directions, as well as we begin to move forward. So there's a dissolution here as well as a taking action into these new spaces in this sense as well, right? So that's kind of got that covered. And again, this Sun trine Uranus, so there's an aspect of change that is occurring here, and we're going to talk about this more once we hit that new moon in Capricorn on Thursday. So let's take a look at Wednesday here, the 10th. So we're going to have the Sun here coming in exact square to the nodes. So again, this is kind of like this foundational aspect. We're kind of setting the foundation here of where we want to move forward now, right? Setting these new goals, setting this new foundation, kind of really putting in the work in a sense to move forward, to gain balance between these two spaces, right? South Node, Libra, all this Venus stuff that we've gone through again through this Mercury. Excuse me, oh my God. This Mercury retrograde stuff. Mercury is in post shadow here now, and we're still kind of going over this old stuff. And Mercury will come into Capricorn again as well later by the end of this week. So we still have this square. Mercury will come into Capricorn later this week, and now we have this square aspect to the nodes. So we're kind of this focus on this new direction where that Venus stuff, as Mercury was in retrograde, we're still kind of like maybe ditching it, coming into balance here with where we want to push forward with this North Node in Aries. Mars is now in Capricorn as well. We just talked about that regarding the 9th. And how that's all going to have an effect there. Okay, Chiron is here moving towards this North Node stuff as well. We don't want to feel hurt in the same ways anymore, right? And this Sun here in square is signifying this direction in which we want to go in, signifying this path in which we want to go and we want to find balance. We're not so much dealing with or pleasing other people. We want to recognize we don't want to feel hurt independently regards to others or regard to any of these Venus kind of related themes. Right, with the Sun still in trine here to Uranus. Wanting change with Jupiter here as well in Taurus, expanding these new spaces with Mars aspecting that. Again, all of this was kind of related. Check out my past like weekly videos and stuff regarding all of this stuff that happened during Mercury retrograde to kind of get an idea of kind of where this is all heading, but we're still kind of dealing with a lot of that energy throughout this as well. The Sun is kind of highlighting this path forward in a sense, which I feel is relating a lot to these changes that we are wanting to make or feeling like we're wanting to begin to set in place regarding anything that came about, again, during this Mercury retrograde type period as Mercury is still in this shadow. That's very much highlighted throughout this week as well. Okay, so let's move to the 11th here. So this is going to be this big day, this new moon in Capricorn. Right. Also on this day, we're going to have Venus in trine to Chiron. So again, like I said, this is bringing up a lot of this stuff that regard this Venus related stuff and this Chiron stuff too, that has happened kind of in this past week. And like I said, this Mercury retrograde where we had a lot of this Venus in Scorpio moving into Sagittarius, wanting to expand. Prior to that, Venus on the South Node, all of that stuff, that Venus-related stuff. Again, check out my previous videos regarding all of that. I don't want to get too much into detail regarding that stuff again, but you can check out the previous weeklies where I go a bit more in depth into that kind of stuff. So this new moon here in Capricorn is still going to be in trine to Uranus here in Taurus. So again, there's an aspect of change here that is occurring. Sun still in square to the nodes. Again, focusing on this path forward. Mars is in Capricorn as well. Mars ruling this North Node energy, this Chiron type energy, setting these boundaries, wanting to move forward. We want to reach or change the ways in which, maybe we want to feel stable in our lives independently, right? We don't want to feel so put upon. We don't want to feel so maybe not so reliant on other people, but how other people have made us or maybe wounded us in a sense as well with this Chiron here, right? Still entrined to this Venus on this day as well. Venus wanting to expand and ruling this South Node, expand away from these old ways of maybe being put upon, maybe being hurt in that sense, right? I want to move forward in our own independent space, to recognize our own independence as well as the other person, right? Okay, so as I was saying here, so we have the sun in squaring to these nodes as well, in trine to this Uranus type energy. So we're dealing with this aspect of change. This is pushing us forward in this new direction here with this new moon in Capricorn. Capricorn is like that foundational aspect, right? So this is laying this new foundation. This is also pretty close in conjunction to Pluto. So like 8 degrees-ish, 9 degrees-ish away, right? So there's this aspect of this transformation that will occur here, right? So, and I want to touch on this too, because next Saturday, I believe, January 20th, I believe that's Saturday. Anyway, it's January 20th. We're going to have this Sun conjunct Pluto exact at this 29 degrees of Capricorn, this anaretic degree, right before this Sun and Pluto move one after the other into Aquarius. And also on that day is when Mercury will come out of its shadow period. So there's a huge aspect of change and moving forward on that day. I feel like prior to this time, we're really beginning to focus on our trajectory here, on what we want to change. Remember, Uranus is still retrograde, so we're still covering this old space of where we want to change away from, right? And this is in a practical sense, a very grounded sense in a way, in what we want to build and move forward on in our lives and change up, right? This Taurus energy is related to Venus here in Sagittarius, wanting to expand. Venus is still ruling the South Node here in Libra. What do we need to let go of in terms of our relationships as well as people and all these Venus related themes? Venus is still playing a huge role here, right? And all that Venus stuff that came up, like I said, during that Mercury retrograde, we're still in the shadow period. It's all coming up. Again, check out my other videos regarding all of that, right? So there's an aspect of our trajectory where we want to move forward in our own independence in that way, and setting those boundaries and laying that foundation that is occurring here. And there is a transformation that is going to occur, because on January 20th, when we have that Sun conjunct Pluto at this anaretic degree of Capricorn, this is like kind of the final nail in the coffin of whatever old world stuff we're kind of getting rid of. However, Pluto will come back to retrograde back, like on that point, kind of later in the year. Like if you kind of take a look here, take a look at the sign transit. So again, January 20th, Pluto will ingress Aquarius. It will come back into Capricorn September 1st, and then we'll come back into Aquarius November 19th. So there's kind of like that 2.5 month period where we're kind of coming back to review that final nail in the coffin again, but we're not going to have the Sun conjunct Capricorn at that degree. This is kind of just a review of that to end that transformation. And then Pluto will not change signs until March 8th of 2043. So we're going to have roughly 20 years of Pluto in Aquarius, of major change, transformation, all of that stuff kind of moving forward in that way, right? So a lot of this, I'm not saying that this new moon is it is kind of highlighting that in a way, but also where we just really want to change, right? Especially when Mercury is going to be out of shadow on January 20th, when all of that stuff kind of happens. I kind of feel like this new moon may be kind of relating to that point a bit, being somewhat in conjunction to that Pluto and in trine to Uranus here regarding those aspects of change, and in square to the nodes in moving forward in this new direction. So there's an aspect of independence here, an aspect of wanting to heal, maybe where we've been wounded with this Chiron energy, right? So yeah. And Mars is here in Capricorn, ruling over this North Node stuff. Again, it's that cardinal energy, wanting to push forward, set those goals, set those boundaries, wanting to put in the work, to push through the blocks here with Mars and sextile to Saturn, to dissolve that old way and set goals for the new way in order to move forward. So it looks like there's a lot of foundational stuff regarding these aspects of change that we are wanting to do kind of on this day, right? And with Venus in trine to Chiron, wanting to expand away in these new directions, shake things up. You know, Venus rules Taurus, like I said, with Uranus here. There's a really strong aspect of change. And regarding our independent self, right? Moving in this North Node space and kind of letting go of that old stuff that's not working. In terms of those Venus-related themes. All right, so that's Thursday the 11th. That's a new moon in Capricorn. So that's kind of, you know, the intensity that's happening there. If we move on to Friday here, the 12th, this is the day that Juno will go retrograde. It's not showing in this chart yet because Juno doesn't go retrograde until 9:51 p.m. here on Friday. That's Mountain Time. But with Juno retrograde in Virgo, this is dealing with aspects of our practical partnerships and relationships. You can see like Venus and Juno are kind of building into like that square here. So there could be definitely an aspect of relationships that are involved with that. With Juno in trine to Uranus, there's an aspect of change that could be occurring here as well. With any retrograde, we're going over this old ground. This could be business contracts, marriage contracts, any kind of partnership contract in a practical sense. You're going to look at and go over those old spaces throughout this retrograde to see what needs to kind of be changed. And it's in Virgo, so it's a practical sense. It's looking at the details of these areas, of these things that may end up changing throughout this retrograde type period. So just kind of note that through this week as well. There's very highlighted aspects of kind of change and even transformation that are kind of coming through this week, and highlighted for, you know, the next week as well. Like I said, January 20th, I feel is going to be like a very pivotal day. All right. So on this day as well, we're going to have Mars in trine to Jupiter. So again, it's this taking action, setting these boundaries and stuff into where we want to expand practically regarding our self-worth, regarding what we value. This very practical, grounded type energy, expanding in our abundance type space as well, and pushing through these blocks. Mars here still in sextile to Saturn. The Sun also in trine to Juno here, as you know, right before Juno is going to go retrograde. So this is highlighting these aspects of these contracts, these relationship type contracts, and going over those old grounds. And with this, there's kind of a grand trine happening here with this Sun in trine to Uranus as well. So there's could be an aspect of change regarding certain types of commitments, right? Capricorn is also like commitment, and it's an aspect of boundaries as well. So it's almost like there's new boundaries being set. There's lots of stuff that's kind of changing regarding our commitments, maybe goals, career, these practical partnerships that are kind of like starting to really be put in place. But this is a grand trine. This is this trine type energy. So this is very positive type shifts, right? Especially with Pluto here at this anaretic degree. Like we're really pushing for this transformation, almost fated transformation at this point. This can be a somewhat fated degree as well. In astrology, a very intense degree of where we're transforming these old foundations, these old aspects of control, these old commitments into something new, and setting, you know, new goals, in that sense as well as we go through this. All right, so that is Friday here. Sorry, I'm trying to go through this as quickly as I can because I don't know when this whole thing is going to end up like dying or crapping out again. Really having some technical issues today. Okay, so let's move to Saturday the 13th here. So this is when we're going to have Mercury coming back into Capricorn to finish, its final end to like this retrograde stuff. So final shadow period. So once Mercury hits, I believe it was 8 degrees of Capricorn, 8 degrees, I want to say 22 minutes, somewhere in there. But anyway, at that point. So Mercury is starting to pick up speed again. We are starting to move forward on this old stuff. Remember, we're still going to end up going over these old spaces regarding this Mercury retrograde. Mercury can feel a bit cold in Capricorn. It's very almost like corporate speak that can happen in this sense. You may see more that kind of stuff come out, either like legal speak, corporate speak, those communication and regarding aspects of, control or government, or like I said, just kind of like that corporate speak that kind of comes up. It's very cold. It's not really like emotional or kind of relatable. It's more foundational in that sense. So that kind of stuff could really come up and could relate a lot to this change and stuff that is occurring around this time. Of course, Mercury is building in trine to Jupiter. Mercury did go retrograde while in trine to Jupiter, but Jupiter was also retrograde at that time. So now we're kind of expanding and moving forward into these spaces as this kind of builds. So again, we're kind of dealing with a lot of change and a lot of highlighting what we've gone over in the past, really since the end of November-ish in that sense. And I say ish because we're still dealing with Venus energy that maybe have existed like prior to that time as well. I feel like that's kind of related. I'd have to go back and take a look at those videos, but I feel like that's kind of related in this sense too. All right, so that's really all I have for this week. All right, hope you all enjoyed this week's forecast. If you liked it, you know what to do. If you didn't like it, well, you also know what to do. Feel free to leave a comment below regarding any of your feedback. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. If you want more from me, I post daily shorts. I also do the same short form on TikTok, as well as I do some text posts as well on Mastodon, Twitter, and Threads. All right, all my links are in the description below. If you're interested to get a reading with me at all, I am open for readings. The link is also in the description below. With all that being said, hope you guys have a great week. Enjoy. Take care. Bye.